All right, everyone, we are officially starting. Thank you for joining us today for Ways to Boost Your Nonprofit Success. We are co-hosted 3 ways today by myself, Morgan BERMAN from MilkCrate, Rachel from Salsa, and we've got Lori from Throw Like a Woman. Thank you so much, everybody. And we are going to now get started. We've already done our introductions in the chat so we can all get to know each other. So we're done with that. You now know how to use the chat, so if you have a question or a comment, feel free to put it in there. We're also going to save some time at the end for a live Q&A. And just as a reminder, we are recording, and the slides will be available, both of which you can access after you fill out the survey that we're going to share at the end. All right, and this is our agenda. Each presenter is going to have 15 minutes to go over their topic, and then we'll do discussion at the end. Quick intro about myself. So I am the founder and CEO of MilkCrate. I'm also heavily involved in the nonprofit world, both before and after starting MilkCrate. I currently serve as the president of my neighborhood civic association and sit on several local boards here in Philadelphia. I worked for a long time in the nonprofit world where I was primarily focused on women's reproductive health care. And now, to kind of balance out the high octane lifestyle of running a nonprofit focused tech company, when I'm not 29 weeks pregnant and on quarantine, I'm practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I've got my contact info on there if anyone would like to get in touch with me later. All right, and our next presenter. Sorry, my monitor is. There we go. Lori, take it away.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here today. I'm going to thank everyone several times, but thank you to Morgan and thank you to Rachel for organizing this amazing event and virtual event. I'm the CEO and founder of Throw Like a Woman Social Impact Services. Our focus is on unique nonprofits and social responsibility. We work mostly with underrepresented and vulnerable populations, and we start with providing a free needs assessment. My background is from the nonprofit world, and then I went over to the corporate social responsibility world. So that's where I started. You can see that Throw Like a Woman won a Social Innovations Award, and I work with several boards. We kind of get co-opted to be on boards, and some of those boards that I work on, the Fashion Incubator and Twist Out Cancer. I'm really excited to answer any of your questions today and hope this will be the first point of contact.
Thank you. Awesome. Rachel?
Okay, hi everyone. Some of you may know me if you are an existing Salsa client. Usually I'm on the other side of things, but today I'll be presenting. So thank you so much, Morgan and Lori, too. Really excited to be doing this together. I've been at SalsaLabs for almost 6 years now, and now I'm holding the position of partner manager, so working with other companies, consulting firms that help our nonprofit clients do better in the great work that they do. Locally involved in an animal rescue here in Pittsburgh. I actually just rescued my first dog in November, so that's been really fun. And I attained my master's in business in August 2018. So proud of that, and that was also really good.
Great. All right, take it away, Rachel.
Okay, so today we're going to really be talking about managing the supporter lifestyle, or life cycle. I'm sorry, the life cycle, and we'll give a little bit about SalsaLabs in case a few people here aren't familiar with who we are and where we are and what we do. I'll also talk about how our clients are successful with Salsa and what we do best here at Salsa. So on the next slide, you'll see just a little bit about SalsaLabs here. We have 3 locations. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're actually just north of Pittsburgh in Wexford, for anybody that's familiar. And we've got probably around 50 employees in this office now. We're also located in Bethesda, Maryland. All of our offices, except for the Wexford one, are still working remotely. So the Bethesda people are working from home. And we do also have a small office in Austin, Texas, which is one place that I love to visit. So anytime that I can get a business trip down there, I'm the first one to raise my hand. So yeah, about 80 employees. Some people might be familiar with DonorPro. which is actually where I come from initially before DonorPro and Salsa merged in 2015. And here at Salsa, we're made up of passionate employees. We have people actually working for Salsa that were previous clients and used DonorPro or used Salsa, and now they work for us. So that's great for our clients because they can talk to people who have really kind of been on the ground in their shoes as well, and on the boards of nonprofits too. And also just something fun, we're an animal-friendly office. So Morgan, if you just do one more click there, you'll see just a little pop-up of some of the mainly dogs come into the office, just some of the friends that we have when we're not in quarantine, and they brighten up our days. Also, you'll see my dog at the end there. She's with the black dog with the pink harness. That's Mia, my rescue. All right. So next slide here, just a little bit, some names that you may or may not recognize. Salsa helps all nonprofits, all shapes and sizes. These are just the few that use our product, and we're really proud to have them. We have small nonprofits, we've got the big nonprofits, we have the medium-sized nonprofits. Always our goal, help our nonprofits do what they do and grow, raise money, raise awareness. And so we're proud to have these names. We're proud to have all of our clients. All right, so next slide, I'm kind of getting into the topic of today and a little bit on why maybe we're able to talk about this, is that our clients are successful with Salsa. You can see these stats here, and actually I just heard that we'll be updating these stats, and everything is going in the right direction for the 2019 numbers that we were able to pull. So donor retention rates going up with using Salsa, increased productivity using the platform suite, increased efficiency with just one tool under one roof, annual donation increase, so all that good stuff that all nonprofits, no matter what you do, like to be able to do, and Salsa's here to help you be successful with that. So that's just a little bit more on why we can talk about these things today. And to the actual managing of the supporter life cycle on the next slide here, we put together, I think, what's a really easy digestible graphic. And this is a little bit more easier to look at than it actually is to do. And for those of us that are on the ground floor, we understand that actually each and every one of these circles is its own project, and it's ongoing, it's cyclical, but it constantly changes too. So the supporter life cycle, and notice I'm saying too, supporter, which isn't necessarily a donor. You can have people that support your nonprofit that maybe have never given, or maybe you're not even a fundraising nonprofit. You just might be an advocacy organization out there raising awareness. And so we start with connecting with our supporters, engaging our supporters, converting them, and kind of moving them upstream. But that process is always ongoing, and it should never stop. And at the center of that is retaining these supporters too. So I'm going to go through each and every one of these, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. All right, so we'll talk about the first one, which is connecting. There are many ways to connect with your supporters, and I think that this is actually one of the ones that changes most often, and it's different for everybody. So you could connect with a brand new supporter through peer-to-peer conversation. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the peer-to-peer fundraising, but word of mouth. People are talking about, oh, I got help from this organization, or this organization is putting on an event. So word of mouth, I think, is one of the bigger ways that organizations get connected with supporters, new supporters, and then also staying in touch with those supporters too. Needs and service-based. If an organization, oh, sorry, you can go ahead. Yeah, that's okay. Needs and service-based, if that supporter is actually using your services. Disability organizations, they're also supporters, and they can turn to supporters. Maybe there's someone who used your service, no longer needs your service, and now they're a supporter, running events, doing fundraising, things like that. It's another way to connect with possible supporters. Volunteering is another big one. We've got a couple volunteer consultant firms that we work with, and even actually platforms that we have. And volunteerism, even though we're sort of in different times now where we might not be interacting physically with each other, there are ways that people are turning this virtual. And so that's just expanding the network in which you're able to connect with potential supporters. Active outreach. Social media is one of the biggest ones that I see. Doing paid ads, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything like that is just another way to connect with supporters. And then people can also find you through organic search. I think probably 99% of nonprofits at least have some sort of online presence, whether that's a website at the very least, and people are searching on Google for help that they may need, resources, assistance, and they can come across your organization that way too. So there are many different ways that a supporter can connect with your organization. And then once they connect with you, the next piece, and that's sort of on the supporter side, now it's in the organization's hand to engage with that supporter. And one thing that I always preach, and we preach here at Salsa, is that not one size fits all. So when you're managing the supporter life cycle, I think it's important to also keep in mind that this changes. And it not only changes for each and every person, it can change for one person multiple times, depending on how they want to be communicated with at that time and place. So, of course, there's different ways to engage. You can email with your supporters, direct mail with your supporters. People are still getting mail. The post office is still in business, so people are still, doing direct mail, and it's working. And then text message too. That's kind of the newest thing that we're seeing here at Salsa. I can just say from personal experience, I get text messages, and it kind of started with the for-profit retail business, but now I'm getting text messages from my doctors or from the vet for reminders and things like that. And text message, I think it has a lot of potential. I have some stats out there that I've read where, people are obviously they're more likely to read a text message because they're not just inundated with email like they are today. But text messages get read at like 90% or something like that. So just something to think about as you kind of move through the different ways to engage with your supporters. It's also important to segment and target, and that kind of just all boils up to the not one size fits all. Always when you're sending out an email or you're doing a text message or even a direct mail, you're going to have different messaging for the different segments that you have. Maybe someone who's never donated before, someone who's given to you in the past. Certainly you want to recognize that, and you'd want to make sure, whatever you're asking of them, which is a slide that we'll get to in a couple minutes here, makes sense for them. You want to recognize that they've given to you before, or maybe recognize that they haven't given to you before, and target those people specifically. So you can have multiple sets of emails that all have the general same message, but the ask might be different because the segment's different. And then marketing automation too. So engaging with your supporters mostly is online, and you can actually make a lot of it automated so that you don't have to do so much work manually. Email series are a great thing to use. And if you're not familiar with email series, they're kind of like drip campaigns. And lots of email programs have this, where you can essentially set criteria for an email to be sent out automatically. You would kind of write your email ahead of time. If somebody comes into your database, or maybe they'd make a donation over a certain amount, or they sign a petition, or they sign up for something, you can have an email series start and kind of cultivate that relationship. And that's just another easy way to engage with your supporters, is you can set up those marketing automations. And I recognize when I'm on sort of an email series or a drip campaign with another organization, and I appreciate it too, because when you make a donation, for example, you usually get that first thank you so much for your donation. And then sometimes I won't hear from an organization until I make a donation again, or until I do some sort of action. But I appreciate the ones who follow up with, hey, thanks again for your donation. These are the great things that we're doing, and your monetary gift helps us reach these goals. And so I think when you think about the whole circle, is it doesn't stop and then restart again when another action has taken, but it should always keep going. And that planning process does take some time. And I think, whiteboarding it and always changing it to what makes sense is important. But I think the ROI on doing that up front is something definitely to be said. And I think it helps too. So the not one size fits all, engaging with your supporters after they connect with you. And then just a little bit on the next slide here is a visual about reaching your supporters where they want to interact and about what is driving your interest. And it's a little bit on the connect side of things too, maybe put people in certain groups. If they signed up for your newsletter list, then you know that they like email. Maybe someone who you met at an event or who volunteered for you, maybe they want text messages. And you can ask these things on sign-up forms too. When they're interested in learning more about your organization, ask questions. What are you interested in hearing from us on? What are you interested in doing? How do you want to help us? If you ask those questions on your sign-up forms, keep that data in your database, wherever it might be, and then that will allow you to segment and target those people based on what they told you. It kind of takes the guesswork out of it. And everyone's different too. You'd be surprised about what people are interested in and what people will do if you ask. And then the next slide here is kind of the final circle in that graph that we showed at the beginning. And it's this whole concept of what is the next ask. There should always be something else that the supporter can do for you. And I've listed just 3 examples, but these 3 examples could go on forever, and there could be many variations of what that next ask might be. So if somebody has signed up for a newsletter, thank them for that, cultivate that relationship. Maybe eventually the next ask is to sign a petition. Volunteered at an event, they obviously have an interest and a passion for your organization and their mission, so maybe they're willing to give a donation. And maybe you start low. Maybe this person, they've given to you in the past, so you can maybe ask them for a higher donation. Some platforms now, like Salsa Engage, does this. You can do dynamic ask arrays. So essentially you can say, if I know that this person has given me $10 in the past, my email that goes out to them is going to say, hey, thank you so much for your previous $10 donation. Could you give 25 or something like that? And that's kind of the start of the smart technology, and it's really taking it to the next level. But it's all about moving them up the tier. What is the next ask? If they made a donation, ask them to run a peer-to-peer event. That's a really hot topic now too, is the peer-to-peer events. Since we're not doing in-person events as often right now, peer-to-peer fundraising is, I think, definitely becoming more popular. And if you're not familiar with peer-to-peer fundraising, it's when your supporters are actually fundraising on behalf of your organization. So the supporter, the donor, are out there asking their friends and family, their network, to give to your nonprofit. But that also means that you as the organization have to be supporting your fundraisers. And that's a whole other presentation too. But that's a big ask, and you would probably ask your most loyal supporters to do something like that. Okay. And then on the next slide here, just kind of to reiterate and visualize, the product that we have, Salsa Engage, allows you to connect online with your supporters. And there are lots out there that you guys can use. And you should look at what they can do. Fundraising, directly emailing your supporters, all the different pieces of fundraising like peer-to-peer, events, sign-up forms, all that good stuff. Online is sort of taking over right now, even though we can still do direct mail. Email and text messaging, as I said, seem to be becoming a little bit more popular, especially in today's world. And then just the last slide, just to kind of recap here with that visual we were talking about. Again, constantly moving, it's changing too. So I would recommend re-looking at the process that you have internally in place, maybe once a quarter, and making sure that all this stuff still makes sense. Also look at it and see what's working, what's not. And I know that's much, much easier said than done. Everyone is so busy. Everyone has a ton on their plate. But if you can, and maybe just kind of take a mental snapshot of this picture and think about your supporters and their life cycle, how you're constantly communicating with them, connecting, engaging, and converting. Okay? And then the next slide we can just talk about real quick. I wanted to just make sure if there are existing Salsa clients, or possibly know if you haven't heard of Salsa before, just a little bit about what we do here at Salsa. The Salsa Engage platform is the online marketing platform that does all these things listed on the left, paired with one of our products, which is Salsa CRM. And that's kind of like the back end database side of things. So if anyone's interested in learning more, feel free to go to our website, which is SalsaLabs.com, and we'd be happy to show you. And I think I have one more slide here, which is just a quote from one of our awesome clients who just talked about the ease of use and the fact that they were able to increase their revenue with Salsa. So that's fantastic. That's what we're all about here at Salsa, and we try to help you manage that supporter life cycle, if I can get that out right. So yeah, that's that. I will pass it over to Lori now.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Morgan. So I want to talk to you a little bit about me. My name is Lori Schuster. I'm the CEO of Throw Like a Woman Social Impact Services. Throw Like a Woman is a mission-driven company serving institutions that advance underrepresented populations by providing a voice through needed, accessible, affordable, and accountable services. So what does that mean? For needed services, we can serve as your interim marketing director, your program manager, help with planning. We're really embedded in your organization to understand your need. And TLOB partners and supports organizational development from ideation, implementation to improvement to increase impact by building capacity. So we are there to help you with planning side and the implementation side. So as you'll see on this mission-driven company slide, where we say here, we're helping nonprofits function like businesses and businesses better leverage philanthropy. Today, we're really focusing on the nonprofits and helping you function like businesses. And want to start talking about how do you do that through planning and understanding this new environment that we're in, and how does that translate to virtual programs. So we're going to start with where to begin. So let's start with what we're covering today. And we want to get you thinking about what questions to ask and thinking tactically. So what are the right questions to ask about virtual programs and events? Is this the right time for your organization to think about these events? Is it the right audience for you? Who is your audience? Are you thinking forward and within the right context? So for us, forward thinking as tactical planning organization is about 18 to 36 months. That's the life cycle we're considering. And that's because we want you to think within your budget context, within your fiscal context, and also thinking about your funders, right? Funding cycles change. Your leadership is going to change. You're going to have a new board. Hopefully you'll have a new board in 36 months. You're going to have a new board president. Hopefully those are the type of things you're starting to think about. And you can still prepare to innovate. Thinking about this within a historical context means that you're fundamentally in line with your mission and those you serve and your stakeholders at the same time. So thinking about all these things, we're going to start to think about objective setting at the same time. We want to ask you this question. Hopefully some of you will have some answers. How have you been redefining priorities and visions of success in this time period? Are you guys doing something new? So that was a group question. Did anyone have anything that they're doing that's new? Any redefining of success? Nope. Okay. So more people are doing virtual events and virtual gatherings and peer-to-peer. So there's a more shift going on online. Great. So that's new for some people. So now we can kind of, because of the coronavirus, we had to move our screenings online. So that's really great to understand. And we're going to move that into how that affects your objective setting. So when we're thinking about objective setting, we're thinking about priority setting, planning, and how does that relate to your mission? And how does that relate to friend raising? For us, friend raising means thinking sustainably, thinking about collaboration, thinking about this in a larger context to really sustainably plan and build collaboration for your organization that will lead to funding. So we create programs that integrate larger organizations and they identify organizational resources. That's the first thing we start you to think about when you're thinking about, am I going to do a virtual program? Am I going to shift anything? Am I going to do something new? What's the scope of the project? What's the impact? What's the impact on my mission? What's the impact on my community? What are the engagement opportunities? What's the outreach? So online, am I going to increase my reach? And some of these big questions we really need you to ask are, what am I hoping to achieve? How is it related to the mission? Oh, you can't see me pointing at mission button, but pointing at mission. And are you solving a problem? Because if you're not solving a problem, then you really shouldn't be addressing this at all. Unless, sometimes you get that volunteer who comes to you and says, oh, I have this great idea, right? And they think that you can hand it off to you and you can just do it yourself. So when planning, you have to start thinking about your resources. What are your costs? That's your cost is your staffing. How much is it going to cost you in time? Is this already in your line item budget? How many volunteers are you going to need? Do you have volunteers engaged already? What's your workload? And what's the impact? So that's the impact question. The impact on your mission, the impact on the community, the impact on the entire organization in general. So if you're doing this already, can you do it more efficiently? Can you do it more effectively? And those are the questions that we haven't even gotten into setting priorities yet. And we're kind of thinking this behind our head. Thinking about, are there other nonprofits that are already doing this? And how is your voice unique? So your voice is unique. You need to integrate that into your messaging. Think about your different target audiences and how you're integrating that into your messaging. You have different target audiences. That's your clients, it's your audiences. Those are your volunteers, your funders, your donors, your stakeholders. And when we're doing this, we're all thinking about smart priority setting. That's sustainable, measurable. That's why you have people like Morgan to help you with measuring, Rachel to understand that planning, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So start setting some metrics for success. That's the measurable side. If you had 30 volunteers last year, if you're going to be attainable, don't set it up to be 100 volunteers this year. Relevant, right? Is it relevant to your mission, as I said before? Is it relevant to your community? And sometimes you have to think about, is it relevant to what your board wants to do? Because otherwise, no matter how great of a program, it just might not get through during this time period. So thinking about sustainability, looking at sustainable outreach practices, we're thinking about engagement for a sustainable time. And it's all about crafting programs that are community-centered, collaborative, and engage your donors and volunteers to increase these engagement opportunities, and using a platform that does that and engaging them in this process. So once you understand these objectives, then you can start creating unique fundraising strategies for sponsors using virtual engagement platforms. So let's move on to some virtual programming ideas. Maybe some people want to brainstorm a little bit. Whether it's virtual or in person, you're still programming. Your mechanisms have changed, but not your missions or outcomes. So hopefully you can find a funder, but we're looking at identifying organizational challenges first, then the scope of these challenges in a time-bound project, assessing your resources again, who's going to do this? And who are your target audience and how are the benefits? So looking at a program, we looked at some organization like Pacific Pride, who increased participation through going on to an online program format using teletherapy and online support groups. Is that something that you can adapt to your model? Educational programs have really increased reach by going online and also integrating this into their website by having more online resources. So this can be looking at things creatively, expanding opportunities for workshops and educational training, looking at virtual resources like virtual workshops. We look at virtual workshops to gather online, to learn and network. We have our partners lead them, like today, right? To increase progress towards your objectives and build community. Virtual training opportunities and education. People turn in to learn about a subject matter related to your expertise, your mission, and they become interested and committed to the mission. Trainings become a part of a larger progress, maybe lunch and learn seminar. Series highlight different aspects of your organization without using any institutional resources and allow for flexibility. We're seeing this often in virtual engagement opportunities that teach skills. So now we can probably move on to how we can recruit and engage some volunteers. Remember that programs and events are always means to recruit and engage volunteers. How you structure your event and program is really important. But before you can use this structure, you have to explore if any of your volunteers are interested in getting involved and who are they. So using some tools to really understand what is your audience and what are some of their skills. And you can empower them. If you're a nutritional nonprofit and you have a lot of nutritionists, maybe you can do a seminar series and put them on a nutritional committee. We're really all about affinity groups and creating a committee structure that mobilizes and empowers our board members, our committee members, so that they can feel empowered to mobilize by giving them a title and engaging them in creating outreach structures. So, but before you can do any of this, you really need to understand and clearly state your why. That's your purpose. Clearly stated and communicated, it's a really powerful tool. When people believe in your mission, they are uniquely engaged and they can become a force for mobilizing your organization. You need to use that in your marketing. You need to use that in your engagement opportunities. And when you engage committee members to do this, they become your biggest marketing organization. So I know that Rachel has gone over this already a little bit, and Morgan will go over this in detail, but we'll go over some positive opportunities to use online structures and platforms really quickly so that we can keep everyone going. Oh, but first we'll ask you a question about your challenges. What are some of your challenges to executing programs online? Besides like kittens running through and chewing on cords. Some of the challenges that we have are that certain organizations don't necessarily using here we go, having downloadable branded content. So marketing, okay, the technology. So training people, we have some issues with working with older adults, that they don't necessarily all have this technology and need to beforehand developing training sessions. Being remote, it's really difficult to train older adults to use technology when you're in this situation. And we thought that there'd be working with homeless program, that there would be an issue with homeless people having phones and stuff, but we found out that that audience largely had phones. So that target market really this wouldn't be an issue. But that's, again, crafting for your target audience. Was that really an issue for that target market? So you have an older membership, they're difficult to reach them online. So that was, for us, we worked with doing intergenerational programs. So that was when we crafted a program online, partnering older adults with younger people and creating a program that really worked for older adults. But considering that a lot of people are right now remote, training them to use the tools might not be great right now. But for a longer term process, it might be a great engagement or tool. So, I'm trying to change the slide. Sorry. So some of the positive tools are that really you can figure out who's your audience, and it might not, again, work for everybody, but engagement, which Rachel talked about before and Morgan talks about more later, has been really great outcomes for this. And if your audience is really a good fit for this model, which you can find out, connection and engagement has really expanded using some of these online resources by creating partnership models and commuting and creating a community beyond your front door and within your front door. So creating a shared experience like Watch It Live, programs become a platform for engagement themselves. So the event becomes a unifying point with shared ideas and content. So you create content around it where you can partner with these organizations to create it. And the opportunity really becomes to build a community. People want to belong and engage in longer periods of time. So empower members to post questions, initiate discussions, participate in polls, react to the content, create shared content, hosts the events themselves. As Rachel was talking about before, they can be peer-to-peer opportunities, and creating programs that can work for your organization. So if before you had a table captain, now you have a host. These are more creative opportunities to boost networking. And this can become a life cycle event too. So it can become before the event, you have drip content. And during the event, you have these engagement opportunities. And after, you're following up and you're finding out who was there and who they were. So who is this audience? So, and you're also creating different kinds of content through shared documents online, having different types of stories that you can share because people are participating in a different way. And it leads to a greater understanding of who are attending these types of events. Also, because costs are so low, you can try things. You don't have to be risk averse. So it costs maybe 3 months to do this, but you don't, and some of your resources, but you don't have much to lose. So you might have a really interesting time to discover that you can reach new people from doing this. So it might be that, again, you're not reaching your senior adult demographic, but you might be reaching some supporters by it. And what's really interesting is that we've been able to expose people to experts that are really engaged in the mission. Board members who wanted to talk about the mission, people that we couldn't afford otherwise from international organizations, developing really interesting educational activities and series to highlight the mission that would cost and be logistical nightmares if not for internet and online tools. So we've had celebrities speak online that waived honorariums because it was an hour of their time. So think about ways that you can expose people to your mission using experts from maybe your board, from your staff, and other ways that you can expose people. And how this can be a great marketing tool as well, given that you have very few costs. So we're going to go into using this as marketing. I think like everyone discussed that pretty well. So marketing is about telling your story, right? You're going to use online content really uniquely to share your story. And sharing stories is really important now, especially in the nonprofit community. Show your impact. Show you're using multiple platforms. We have these multiple platforms at your disposal, and use it before and after the event. This is own content for you. So Morgan's recording this presentation. Now I have quotes about what I've said. I'm going to use that in a newsletter. Do the same thing for your nonprofit. Make sure that you have someone on there. Cut it and edit it. Use it in interesting ways. You use board members quoting you before the event. You're engaging in partnerships. Have people blog. These are different perspectives about who you are. Engage leaders and participants. Use videos and interviews. There's great lead-in content. Have photos. There's so many ways to show we've been doing mini missions for a long time, but you can convert a mini missions to a behind the scenes tour really easily when you're doing online. So managing your program, which is my favorite thing, it's creating a process that works for you, and you're managing it online. So what you're asking yourself is basically, how is this going to work? Starting with, are we going to do this? And then seeing if it's a good fit for your organization. You schedule it out, you're preparing, prepare, engage in drip content. It's before the event, setting up things at work. You have lots of own content, utilize it in unique ways, thank people, and use data because it's online. And you have lots of cool ways to have data and know your audience. So thank you for your time today. Make sure you give yourself lots of time to test and plan your audience and use things really uniquely. This is a great time to understand your audience and use analytics and data. And that's where I'm going to hand it off to Morgan, because she's going to talk to you all about those things, and that's not my area. If you want more information, please go to our website. Thanks, Morgan.
Thanks, Lori. Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, I'm going to build on some of the themes that the other two presenters have talked about, but it's going to be in the very specific context of the MilkCrate platform and some of the nonprofits that we work with. So who here is running a program either for volunteers, beneficiaries, or members at a nonprofit? And maybe you wish engagement and progress or tracking was easier. And I've seen some of you already touch on some of these things, but that's really where we as a company kind of shine, is when we work with organizations that are running programs. So, all sorts of different nonprofits out there, most of them are running a program of some kind where they're trying to get volunteers out into the world to do good work. They're trying to provide direct services. You're trying to do, free mobile food delivery. That's awesome. We just launched an app for a grocery delivery for seniors to help them avoid getting infected with coronavirus. Yes, that's so cool. So yeah, please keep sharing those in the chat. So when you're running a program like this, and I'm curious, perhaps 24K Marketing could share us how you're running that mobile delivery or that food delivery. When you're running a program, you're often relying on a combination of analog and digital tools. The top line in blue are the analog, the bottom is the digital. You're probably having to use a lot of these different things. Some of them don't integrate. Some of them require a lot of manual work to implement and track and input. I know when I used to be a case manager, I had paper client files, and I had a efforts to outcomes account, and I had other things on top of that I had to use, the forms and things that I had to keep track of my clients, and it was very laborious and a really bad way to try and keep track of things, and it put all the work on me instead of giving my end user, the clients that I was serving, the chance to kind of actively participate in the work. So I'm curious, of the tools that I just showed on the previous slide, which ones are you using? Which ones are you struggling with? Which do you wish you could get rid of yesterday? Some of you may have had to start implementing new things that you're struggling with, especially since some of your programs are no longer able to run live in person. Very cool. Yeah, just looking at the chat there. So what is MilkCrate? MilkCrate is a platform that is designed specifically to help nonprofits that are running programs, whether that program is for volunteers, direct beneficiaries, members, or program participants, so that you can launch your own nonprofit program app for your audience. You can even launch the app for multiple audiences and have them have different experiences in the app depending on what type of role they have within your organization. You're able to choose from ready-to-go features that match your engagement and tracking needs. So wanting to pick from things like events calendar, a volunteer sign up, or a directory of resources, chat, all kinds of different features, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then being able to manage your users and your content in a way that generates activity reports. So in essence, every nonprofit that we work with is getting their own native mobile app with their brand, their content for their users, and they're able to control it with an admin dashboard. It's kind of the same revolution that WordPress and Squarespace and Wix had in the website world. And MilkCrate is having that in the mobile app space. We're making amazing technology affordable so that you don't have to have your own mobile app development team. You don't have to understand how this technology was built. All you have to do is implement it and benefit from it. And we are in many ways similar to the kind of ethos of engagement and tracking that Salsa talks about, but we are completely different in that we are not a fundraising platform. This is not for requesting solicitations and donations, although you can add that component to it. This is for people that you need to communicate and engage with multiple times a week, or at least several times a month, the people that you're serving. Now, this is an example, a quote from one of our clients. Right after coronavirus hit, we called all of our clients and we said, what has been going on in your organization? How are you managing the transition from online programming to offline programming to online programming? And Diego from Inner City Capital Connections said that now more than ever, we need an engagement platform. How nice that we already had one. So that felt really good that they felt prepared. But I know that a lot of you are probably having to make this transition mid-stride. And I mentioned the organization that's doing food delivery for seniors. That was a kind of emergency out of the blue, like that nonprofit was tasked with suddenly delivering services that they hadn't done before because of what was going on in the world, and being able to launch an app in 2 or 3 weeks so that they could make it easy for volunteers to go out into the world and do that work was, it was scary, but it got the job done quickly. And now they're off and running and able to take that whole program online in a way that they hadn't before. Now, the way that it works and what this looks like, and we'll talk about at the end, like who does this make sense for? Because this is not for every program. But when it does make sense, and we implement it, it's a really simple onboarding process for the users. They basically just find your app in the App Store as they've been told what it's called. They download it, they create a profile, they join a segment or a team, and this is where I mentioned lots of segmentation is really important because you have different people with different roles. So You might have volunteers who need to be seeing different kinds of content than your clients. Or you might have different types of volunteers. You might have volunteers that are in a completely different program or in a completely different geography. And the content that they're seeing in the app and the way that you're tracking them needs to be different. And so your users are able to join a different segment depending on that. And then they're brought into the app where they can start doing things. They can sign up for a volunteer shift, or they can chat with a mentor. They can answer a survey. They can watch a video. We're actually adding badges and levels so they can start progressing and leveling up so you can track things over time. That was really crucial when we were talking to the Girl Scouts this week, because they're all about badges and they love that idea of being able to measure progress. But I'm sure a lot of organizations wish they could do that kind of thing. Oh, no problem, Holly. We'll have the slides for you. So these are some of the features that we talked about that I mentioned briefly in a previous slide, that the events calendar, being able to send push notifications. You know, a lot of you guys have kind of hinted at that, like, reaching people is kind of a challenge. Well, when you're relying on social media, at best you're getting 1 to 5% of people seeing a post, even if they have push notifications turned on, because your audience is not going to hear from you unless you're paying to reach them through Facebook and things like that, because they have an advertising model. And so if you have your audience, your volunteers, or your direct beneficiaries in your own app, when you send a push notification, if they have notifications turned on, they're going to get it. You don't have to pay extra to reach them. You control that line of communication, which is really powerful and much more effective. You can also see some of the other features. And if you go to milkcrate.tech, oh, hi, Lena. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you can just send me an email and I'll get you to the right place. So if you're interested in learning more, and I understand some people might have to hop off, you can send me an email, and we'll also make the content available at the end. Oh, Susan, don't underestimate your older donors. They've had to learn how to use tech tools. Absolutely. And I'm going to show you some data in just a little bit about kind of demographic information around smartphones. So we're going to get to that in just a sec. So I'm going to skip the questions because I think we're running out of time here. So here's a case study I wanted to share, which is the WeVote app. So this was a program that was run entirely on basically a simple web page in the beginning. This program was for employers in the city of Philadelphia to make it easy for their employees to be more civically engaged. And if they signed up, they were given posters and flyers that they could post in their offices. And that was basically it. So it was just one directional communication, no tracking, no engagement. And now they have the WeVote app built on the MilkCrate platform, where every single employer has their own team or segment in the app, and all the employees are users, and all of the content, volunteer opportunities, learning about candidates, everything's in the app. And every time that they do something, they earn points, and that gets tracked. And there's a leaderboard showing which employers are doing the best. And so it becomes this fun, competitive environment for civic engagement for this program that the Committee of 70 runs. Most importantly, the data. So the output they were able to measure is that 450 instances of voters viewing the voter guide in this election cycle. That's like their most valuable piece of content that used to get almost no engagement on a Facebook post, that now they're able to actually measure and improve using the app. And even more importantly, the outcome they were able to measure is that app users were 50% more likely to vote after downloading the app at least 1 week before the election. So their most important thing that they're trying to achieve and measure as an organization, they were able to finally do for the first time by implementing mobile technology. One last example is a volunteer example. The Read by Fourth campaign is something that has really brought together over 100 different organizations, with a key program component being the volunteers that go door to door to promote literacy to families. Those volunteers, many of whom are seniors, used to have to carry around a 4-inch binder of materials. Now the mobile app that they launched on MilkCrate has all the resources they need organized by the age of the family, the age of the child of the family that they're speaking to. And so it makes it much easier for them to have the right information in their hands in the moment when they're engaging with a family and talking to them about pre-K, reading at night, how to encourage a love of reading at home. But even more importantly, they're able to see which volunteers in which zip codes are sharing what information and overlay that with reading score data so they can track the engagement and what's being done by the volunteers and the outcomes that they're trying to achieve in terms of reading scores. This is just meant to kind of represent the virtuous cycle that we're trying to create for our clients, which is when they get funding in the top left-hand corner, the funding comes into the organization. The organization designs and launches their own affordable native mobile app with MilkCrate. They deploy it to their users, whether that's volunteers or direct beneficiaries. And the engagement and behavior and participation that happens in that app turns into data points that can be used to impress funders to keep getting more funding. We are not a fundraising tool, but we are definitely a tool that helps you get more funding. And so that's kind of the virtuous cycle that we're trying to create for our clients. And just, I promise, this is some of the data I was going to share about who's using smartphones. You can see on the right-hand side that the vast majority of Americans have a smartphone. Every single demographic is 70% or higher, except for 65 years old. They're at 53%, which is still the majority. So overwhelmingly, all race, gender, economic, education backgrounds, everybody is using smartphones. It is the most equitable way to reach people. So I think that's often important information that maybe people don't have. I also like to talk about why apps make sense for some organizations and not others. Basically, I'm going to just summarize this and say, if you're running a program and you've got participants and you need to track them, it makes sense. If you can deliver real value to your end users so that it's not just homework or a brochure or a website and an app, but something that they actually need to be doing and engaging with over time, this can be really valuable. And that has to be valuable to the staff too. It has to make their jobs easier. It has to make it easier for them to collect data, to analyze it, to reach people, to engage them, all those things that program staff are trying to do every day that takes so much time. We can make that easier. I've summarized this in the most visually simple way I can think of, which is if you need consistent engagement from program participants and you need the data around what's happening with them, then a mobile app can make sense. So finally, just breath of hopefully relief is when people have in the past looked into building an app. It's something that they think, oh my goodness, my nonprofit can't possibly afford this. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's going to take years and I need experts. We're meant to make that all go away. This is supposed to be affordable, fast, designed for the needs of nonprofits. And we have transparent pricing tiers on our website so that you don't have to worry. This is not something that's going to break the bank. This is designed to make mobile apps accessible for nonprofits in a way that they've never been before, so that you can engage your program participants, you can track them, you can report on it, and make things easier for you guys, especially in this time where everything needs to go more and more digital to be able to keep things moving along. Now, last slide, I think, is just different types of nonprofits we've worked with. We have lots of case studies on our website. You can feel free to check that out, and I'll be sending that in the chat in just a second. Now, we have just a very few minutes left, so what I'd like to do is I'm first going to share the link to the survey. Whoops. So this is going to go in the chat, so anyone, please, please, please take a moment to just fill this out. We would really appreciate your feedback on today's presentation. There's also a chance, because I know some of you were interested in getting more information or talking to some of the presenters today, there's a chance to indicate that in the survey, and then we'll be in touch with you all. So feel free to do that. I also mentioned our website as a way to kind of learn more, so I'm going to put that on there too. Mary, you just asked, did you mention MilkCrate was included upon sign up? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but if you can clarify, I'd be happy to answer that. And then also we could have a conversation offline. So we have 3 minutes, so happy to take any questions in that time. I tried to go quickly. I'm a little out of breath. So feel free to, oh, is MilkCrate included with SalsaLabs? Not yet, but maybe we should talk about that, Rachel.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Any other questions besides helping me team up with Salsa, which is an idea I love? Thanks, cool tech. That's awesome. Great, well, thank you all so much. Feel free to